Hello Internet, I'm Skarecrow85, and right now I want to talk to you about one of my favourite Sonic characters, maybe even my favourite games character, Dr. Ivo Eggman Robotnik. So first off, obviously, I mentioned this in my Metal Sonic video. I'll quickly clarify the issue of his name. In Japan, it was and has always been Eggman, but for us here in the West they renamed him Dr. Ivo Robotnik. The games have since clarified that Robotnik is indeed his family name, while Eggman is an alias that he chooses to adopt. His first name has never been said out loud in the games, and a lot of people prefer to pronounce it Ivo. Honestly, that's totally up to you, really. Ivo to me sounds more like evil, which is appropriate. Also, technically, Ivo is the correct pronunciation in the same way that you would say Igor rather than Igor. But yeah, as his first name exists only in the game manuals at the moment, we don't need to quibble about how you say it. If you want to say Ivo, that's up to you. But yeah, so by the way, now would be a really good time for me to mention I am sticking to the video games here. So it's possible that someone mentioned in the comments of the previous video that he may have actually said his name out loud in one of the animated cartoons or something. Honestly, I'm not sure. I haven't watched all of them. I've seen all of Sonic X. I've not seen a hell of a lot of the Satam. So I don't know. Maybe he did. But I'm not taking that into consideration for this video. I'm sticking exclusively to the video game canon, or you might call it the mainstream official canon. So I won't be going into Eggman Robotnik's many other versions in the comics and cartoons. I do love those versions, by the way, but the video would be like 24 hours long if I tried to cover it all in one go. So let's start with his origin. So originally he was designed by Naoto Oshima. I may or may not have pronounced that correctly, apologies if I did not. He was originally designed as a potential main character. Basically, you may or may not know that Sega at the time were trying to reinvent themselves to compete better with Nintendo, who were dominating at the time with Mario. And Mario had been around quite a bit longer. Sega had, their current mascot at the time was Alex Kidd, which is, those games are pretty fun. They're a little bit generic, I guess, by today's standards, and the character wasn't particularly interesting. I think he was loosely based on the Monkey King, but yeah, he wasn't really, he didn't stand out, he wasn't interesting enough to really kick Mario's ass. So they started designing new ideas for new characters, and this design came up, sort of mustachioed chap in pyjamas. He was designed to look like Theodore Roosevelt, and he, the American president, which I think is really cool. Basically, they repurposed this design because they liked it so much to be the antagonist of the game, and they gave him a design that they felt would be easy for kids to draw, which again is quite nice. That's why he's got that basic circular design. As the antagonist, though, he's the only human that we see in the first Sonic game, and he basically represents industrialism, capitalism, various bad things that humans do. You're playing an animal versus humans, and pollution and all that kind of thing, which is quite a nice thing for a game to do, I suppose. It's teaching us something subliminally. Robotnik, he's best known for capturing animals to power his badniks, his machines. He's a bad dude. He's played for comedy an awful lot of the time, but at his core, he's willing to do pretty much anything for his own gain. His gain is to build Eggman Land. He wants to build this kind of utopia as he sees it. Eggman Land is a sort of, I don't know, it's sort of like an industrial theme park, and he wants it to ultimately cover the entire planet. It's also interesting to note that Dr. Eggman Robotnik can run faster than Sonic. He's done this on numerous occasions in the classic games, and they did it again in the Sonic 4 games. For some reason Sonic just can't catch him. Obviously that's probably just from a gameplay perspective. It wouldn't make sense for Sonic to catch him, but I don't know, that is pretty weird. But he's got those spindly little legs, so, whatever. He's also known to have an IQ of 300, which is, I think, technically impossible. That said, that would explain why he's completely nuts, and why there are always obvious flaws in his machines, because if he has an IQ that high, then he's going to be all over the place. he's known for being able to create some pretty incredible things very quickly and off the top of his head sometimes. Very complex things, but he always leaves stupid mistakes in them, and I think that's believable. If you have an IQ that high, you're going to be very flawed in certain ways. That said, from a personality perspective, he's quite a quirky chap. My favourite description of him is in the Sonic Heroes game manual, in which he's described as a romanticist, a feminist, and a self-professed gentleman. I just absolutely love that. We've never really actually seen him with a woman romantically. I mean, Elise doesn't count. And I can't count the time he was with Sarah in the OVA, although he did intend to marry her. That's the nearest we've ever seen him get to procreation. But we do know that he has a bloodline because of a character called Dr. Eggman Nager. Eggman Nager has been confirmed to be a descendant of Dr. Robotnik and carries the Robotnik family name. I can't remember in what game, might have been Sonic Rivals 2, he does actually say something about Eggman, like, spoiling the family legacy or something, which is part of why he came back in time. When Nager was introduced, he was introduced as an alternate dimension version of Robotnik, but it's more likely that he came from the future, Silver's future most likely, and he travelled through dimensions to get to Blaze's dimension in an effort to take it over. This is all fan theory stuff, like there's nothing really secure here. People did wonder about the origin of Blaze's world and her alternate dimension stuff when they did Sonic 06, but Sonic 06 is garbage and also non-canon, so don't worry about it. It wrote itself out of existence. Let's just pretend that never happened. So yeah, as far as anyone knows, and I think it was confirmed in Sonic, Mario and Sonic at the London Olympic Games. In that, when you meet Dr. Eggman Nager, one of the characters, I think Tails, describes him as being Dr. Eggman's descendant from the future. So that's basically where he comes from, which is curious because that does mean that Eggman, we know he has to have kids at some point. Now, we know some things about Eggman's family, as in who he's descended from. We know he has a grandfather called Professor Gerald Robotnik, who he was involved in all kinds of stuff. He studied ancient history of the world. He studied the echidnas. He studied ancient powers. An awful lot of Robotnik's, Eggman Robotnik's, recent plots have involved borrowing from things that his grandfather had researched previously, not least the Ark, the Space Colony Ark, and the Shadow Project. So, but Gerald wasn't, strictly speaking, he was more of a kindly professor. He wasn't really a villain, although he did go mad toward the end when Maria, Maria Robotnik is Dr. Eggman's cousin, and she died some 40 years ago as a result of a government action when they went in and basically tried to cover up the research that created Shadow, and she got shot. But yeah, so she was his cousin. That was 40 years ago. We don't know whether or not Eggman was born at that point, but he's got to be in his 50s or 60s, somewhere around that age. That's not too old to have a family, but if I had to guess, I would say that Robotnik probably already has kids. Like, he probably already has a family somewhere. We don't know much about him outside of when Sonic encounters him during his schemes. Like, there's a lot of downtime for Robotnik where we don't see what he gets up to. You know, we always come to him once he's already built stuff, once he's already enacting his plan, but we don't often see what he's doing beforehand or in between times. In Sonic Riders 2, I think, we discover that he's actually got other companies that he runs under different names, and some of them are quite successful, selling guard robots and things like that. So we know that he's up to stuff all over the place. A lot of industry uses Eggman Tech stuff. In Sonic Battle, I think it was called, the one that was on Game Boy Advance, it was like a beat-em-up. In that, we see that Rouge, at Club Rouge, uses E123 Gamma Omega. Damn it, what's his name? You remember Gamma from Sonic Adventure 1? Robotnik was producing replicas of him and selling them off as guard robots, which is curious. So yeah, we know he gets up to some stuff outside of his schemes. He's as I said, he's an industrialist. You know, he owns property, he builds business. He's a very successful man. We don't get to see a whole lot of that side of him. And I think that it's entirely possible that he has a home life or a family life. That's my theory anyway. There's nothing proven, there's nothing in the games that states that, but we do know that Eggman Nager is a descendant of his. Also, we don't know how far in the future Eggman Nager has come from. He could actually be Robotnik's son, for all we know, although it seems unlikely, otherwise that might have been mentioned. But anyway, other things about Dr. Robotnik. What else is there to say about him? He's officially 6 foot tall, which is quite tall for such a hefty dude, but he's not actually. In the original designs, he was always said to be fat because of his entirely circular design. But in more recent versions, he's got a bit of a tum on him, but he's fairly trim. We know that he's very active. In the egg carrier, he had a swimming pool built in. And we know he eats reasonably healthy food. He certainly, I think in, what was it? In one of the games, Sonic Unleashed, he eats a sandwich. Wait, no, not in Sonic Unleashed. He feeds Professor Pickle sandwiches in Sonic Unleashed. But no, he eats one in colours. We see him eat a sub. And he eats it very, very quickly. He also provides one of the what are they called? The bad guys from Sonic Lost World, the SETI. He gives one of those guys a sandwich as well. So he likes his sarnies. We also know from Sonic 06 that he has blue eyes because of his sort of more realistic depiction in that. I don't think we really need to consider that canon or really care about that. In some of the older versions, like he always wears pince-nez, the little glasses that like pinch the bridge of your nose to hold on, and they often had blue lenses, which is probably where the blue eyes design came from. Although in some versions, like in the artwork for Sonic 2, he doesn't have any glasses on and he just has black hollow eyes, scary as hell. Like that poster scared the shit out of me as a kid, by the way. Eggman was genuinely intimidating in that picture. He turned up as a playable character in a few games back in the day, mostly sports games, and he still shows up in a lot of games, a lot of racing games, and also tennis games. Obviously the Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, he shows up in those. You can play as him in many games like that, but as a properly playable character, he's only ever really been in Sonic Adventure 2 as a properly playable character, third person, stomping around in one of his machines. It was quite fun. I wish that there was a bit more of it. I wish that we could play him more. You could also get him out of the machine and run around on foot during the Chow Garden sequences in that game. He was also playable in Sonic, what's it called? The RPG one, Sonic Chronicles. He was playable in that, or at least, you know, you could have him on your team and you could run around the environments using Dr. Eggman, which I thought was very cool. It was a lot of fun. I do appreciate him being playable. I would very much like there to be a spin-off game specifically about Dr. Robotnik. There is a game called Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine from back in the day, which you've probably heard of. It's Payu Pop. It's Payu Payu. And that's got nothing to do with Dr. Robotnik. Also, in that game, they used the art style from the Sonic Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. I mean, I would rather they did something more Eggman-y, if you follow me. I'm sure they won't, but he will always be in the Sonic games. Although, that said, he wasn't in Sonic and the Black Knight. He didn't show up at all in that. I think his logo appeared and some of the badniks were, but Robotnik himself, it's pretty much the only game that he hasn't been in, or had a cameo in some way. In Sonic Generations, at the end of the game, he's discussing his life, essentially, with his past self, and during that, he talks about whether Dr. Eggman of the past says, "Do we ever win?" And Eggman at the present says, well, it depends on how you define winning. And Eggman of the past says, well, defeating Sonic. And he says, no. Well, that's interesting to me, because winning at that point to him means beating Sonic. But winning as in actually achieving his goals, yeah, he has actually done that in the games multiple times. And most noticeably, I would say, were in Sonic Riders. His objective is to get the treasure that belonged to the Babylonians, and he actually does. He holds the characters at gunpoint and makes them hand it over, and it's a rug. And the thing is, Eggman is so overwhelmed that he'd done everything for a rug that he doesn't notice that it's actually a flying carpet. He freaks out and he passes out. So he had actually won. He could have just walked out of there and he achieved his goal, but he freaks out and passes out, and so technically loses the day, so it's not really a win, but he basically had won. There's a couple more. In Sonic Unleashed, that is his game. I know that he unleashes Gaia, but and it's mostly about Gaia, but that was his plan, and he achieves it. In the opening cutscene, he batters Sonic stupid, like he utterly beats his ass. He defeats Super Sonic. I mean, when has that ever happened? He captures Super Sonic, depowers him, turns Sonic into a werehog and flings him into space. Then he cracks the planet open and successfully builds Eggman Land. I mean, that is a win if ever I've seen it. Obviously, by the end of the game, he has been defeated, but by goodness, that's pretty much as good as it's ever going to get for him, probably. I won't go into too much detail on it because it's kind of a twist. I guess it's a spoiler, but if you've played Sonic Chronicles, you'll know what I'm talking about. The ending to Sonic Chronicles, Dr. Eggman kind of wins, sort of wins. It's a to be continued sort of situation, so I mean, I guess I've already spoiled it there, but I do wonder actually if that has any tie-in connections with the new upcoming Sonic Forces. But again, if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to go into any detail on that just because it's a spoiler and it doesn't really matter. But yeah, he kind of wins in that one. And I like that. I like to see Eggman actually achieve something every once in a while. It's nice to have a little payoff for the bad guy. Oh, also, in Generations, at the end, when he's talking to himself, he considers going back and getting his teaching degree. So it sort of implies that, obviously he's an intelligent guy. He was involved in universities and colleges and so on at some point, one would assume. I like the idea of him being a teacher though, Professor Robotnik. Can you imagine having him as a teacher? That would be outstanding. Anyway, to sort of start to wrap up a little bit, again, they mention it in the Sonic Heroes in the Sonic Heroes manual that he sees Sonic as being more of a rival, which I think is curious because, I mean, well, rival means, hang on a minute, let's get the dictionary definition up here. Yep, there we go, rival. It means a person or thing competing with another for the same objective or for superiority in the same field or activity. So that's not really an appropriate term. Like, Sonic is not Eggman's rival. Sonic is not attempting to achieve Sonic Land. But what it really means is that Eggman doesn't see Sonic as an antagonist or a threat. He sees him as someone, sort of almost like a friendly challenge. And we have seen that to some extent in the games. Like, he doesn't always take Sonic particularly seriously. Like, he finds him more annoying than anything. And in a lot of games, he's well aware that Sonic's going to get involved at some point, and he openly invites Sonic to come along. He's made some pretty concerted efforts to kill, I won't lie, but always in service of achieving his goals. During the events of Sonic Lost World, when the characters have teamed up, there's a moment when Tails nearly gets attacked by a badnik, and Robotnik actually jumps in and saves Tails. And Sonic says, "Wait a minute, just a minute ago you were trying to kill us and now you're saving us? Like, what's that about?" And Robotnik just replies,
"I'm a complicated guy."
And that's true, he is a complicated guy, and I love the mystery that surrounds him. Like, we don't really know a hell of a lot about him. Even after all this time. Also, lastly, he appeared in Wreck-It Ralph. he's been in a few films, TV, spin-offs, stuff like that. He's been referenced and so on, but he actually had a cameo appearance in Wreck-It Ralph. If you saw it, he was one of the members of the Bad Anon sort of counselling group, which I very much appreciated. Although it is weird that he presumably was, the game that he came from in that arcade was Sonic the Fighters. You can see it in the arcade, and in that had him in a sort of primitive 3D version of his classic design. So I don't know why he had his modern look. Maybe he came via the internet, maybe they got a Wi-Fi router in the arcade. We'll find out more maybe in Wreck-It Ralph 2, which is on its way. Ralph breaks the internet or something like that. I don't know whether Eggman's going to show up in the next one, but in that one, yeah, he had his modern look, which is fine by me. I do like some of Eggman's new looks. I particularly like his flight jacket from Sonic Boom. God damn, that's a cool look. Also, Robotnik will be showing up in the future movie. There's a movie coming out, a Sonic the Hedgehog movie. You may or may not know this. It's not been talked about a great deal. It's in production at the moment, or in pre-production. Like I say, there's very little information on it. I think it's being published by Sony, I'm gonna say. It's the people that did the Smurfs, I think. Because that's the worry, is that it's going to be like that. Rumour has it it's going to be a CGI live-action hybrid, and at this stage nobody knows whether they're going to cast a live-action actor to play Dr. Robotnik, or whether they're going to go with a CGI iteration for him. Honestly, I'd rather they kept it totally CGI. I do not think it'll work as a hybrid. It could, I'm willing to be proven wrong. I'm a fan of the Sonic and the Sonic series, so you know, a modern movie, I'm up for it. I'm interested, but I'm cynical. I'm a little worried, like it could go anywhere, and Robotnik is my favourite character, so I don't want them to get it wrong. I don't want it to go bad. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But for the time being, he's showing up better than ever in Sonic Mania, it would seem, and he's pretty much already won in Sonic Forces. So for me as a fan of Dr. Eggman, I'm happy right now. I'm really happy. Things are going well for our boy, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he does next. So yeah, that's it. That's my rundown of Dr. Robotnik. I hope you enjoyed it. I probably missed stuff. Like I've got notes all up the walls and all over my bed sheets. I've written notes everywhere, and I've probably missed tons of stuff. So if there's anything you think is worth mentioning about Dr. Eggman from the video games, by all means chuck it in the comments. I'd love to know. I'd love to continue the conversation with you. If you do want to say stuff about the comics, by the way, and the animated series, go ahead. Like, because I'm not that familiar with those. I read the Fleetway, the UK comic, Sonic the comic. I know all about that. But the Archie comics I'm not as familiar with. I've read a few of them, read bits and bobs here and there, and I've read up on it, but I'm not as fluent in it. So if there's anything you want to say, anything you want to tell me, yeah, I'm interested to hear it. So that is Dr. Robotnik, and thank you for listening. Catch you in the next video.